Greetings, traveler. In video games, you might have encountered the phenomenon of the handicap, especially when playing racing games or other multiplayer games. It's a quite controversial topic. On one hand, it sounds like a lot of people will enjoy these games because they have a better fighting chance, while in other cases, people who put the effort in the game feel that their effort is thrown away because there's handicap in the game, and people who are not so good will catch up to them anyway. Today, what I want to do is break down a little bit what this handicap is, how it manifests in many games, and talk about how the system affects players on both sides, both on the winning and on the losing side. And finally, I want to give my thoughts about how I think we can move forward in this design spectrum, and what's a good way to basically keep everybody, if not happy, at least happier. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 14 years now, and the topic of game balance when it comes to handicaps has been always a point of highly discussed opinions, especially when it's a multiplayer game, right? So in single player, this problem doesn't happen so much because the player is supposed to win eventually always, but in multiplayer games usually there is the winner and the loser, or winners and losers, and so on. So handicap, as it manifests in those cases, is that, for example, there's a racing game and the person who's winning doesn't have any special effect applied to them, but the people who are further back from the second until the last place usually get a speed boost or some power up or some way to sabotage the person in front of them in order to gain a position. And this, of course, was born because if there's a race and you start last and you finish last and you never have a fighting chance and you can never pass anyone, then that makes the game boring, right? So conversely, for other multiplayer games, perhaps there is highly specialized weapons that are very good for certain situations, but at the same time there are weapons that are very effective at all skill levels, and even if you don't pick the more advanced weapons or the more high skill ceiling weapons, you could still use the same very simple weapon to great effect throughout the game, possibly defeating players who are more experienced and more skilled with the game because you're using that very simple weapon. So it can manifest in many ways, this type of handicap. But what does that mean exactly for the winners and the losers of the match? Well, let's start with the losers, right? If you're starting further down the order in a racing game, or if you're new to a game where there's many experienced people and you have this mechanic that basically lets you fight with the people who are winning, it feels great. It feels good to know that even though you're new, you still have a fighting chance. Even though you didn't start first, you still have a fighting chance. So that encourages people who are already playing the game to perhaps keep playing. On the other side, for more experienced people or people who are winning, let's say in a racing game, they might enjoy one victory, but that victory will be very difficult because even though they are better at the game of racing, all these other power-ups and handicap mechanics, also called rubber banding sometimes, will basically nullify all their skill in speed and so on. So in many cases, this effect is so extreme where it's advantageous not to be winning in this kind of race game until the very, very last moments of the race, where you can use your power up, take out the person who's at first, and then you become first, and there's no time for anybody else to use the same trick on you because the race has already ended by that point. So you might think that this only happens in games, but actually it happens in sports as well. There's many sports where the winner is penalized after they become the winner, or like in Formula 1, teams that did not become champions in a year, then they get extra budget to develop their cars, they get extra wind tunnel time allowance to improve their aerodynamics that the winner or the champion doesn't get in that season. So that's of course great because there's more competition, there's more chances for close racing and so on. But what does that mean for the winner, and how does that tie back to video games? Well, normally the unspoken agreement here is that winning feels good, right? Winning is an achievement. If a group of players all fight for the same thing and one of them gets it, it's supposed to be a reward. It's supposed to be a good feeling that you won. So if that positive reward feeling is immediately taken away, so if you're penalized for winning or for putting the effort to own your skill in something by someone who is not as skillful or who didn't put as much effort into the victory, then that feels strange. And moreover, it makes you wonder, wait a minute, so if the point of the game is not to reward the most skilled player, what is in fact the point of the game? And that leads into another problem, surprisingly. So the person who is winning is usually a big fan of the game, right? So if it's a racing game or a multiplayer game and so on, the person who has played the game for a while and enjoys it and wins likes the game and wants to enjoy the game more, hopefully with friends. So that person is the reason that group of players came to the game to begin with. So when winning starts feeling worse and worse and worse for that player because he gets penalized more and more and more, then you have a very strange type of training where you are trained to feel bad for winning, which kind of defeats the purpose of this whole thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of games that are multiplayer that are not all about one person winning or one team winning. It can be cooperative or it can have a different format. But for the games that are all about winning, penalizing the winner essentially will push him away eventually. And with that reason of other players joining to play together, them going away as well because their friends stop playing, because that team is no longer together, because they're all playing some other game, then that takes players away from the game. So it sounds like a very short-sighted move, and the effect of the player winning not wanting to stick around is a very strange one. So that's definitely a downside to it. And thinking about what can be done to have a more, I don't want to say fair, because not all games are about fairness and equal competition and so on. The fun is always the main element. So what can be done to make sure that competition can still happen, but all players still have a fighting chance in the game, essentially? So from what I've observed, if simply the rules or the setting change from one match to the next, that achieves the goal of highlighting different skills within the player group, while still maintaining this feeling of equality and competition between the players. So what do I mean exactly? So instead of having a handicap feature, let's say in a racing game, what if instead the tracks that are in the championship highlight, let's say, high-speed cornering in one track and slippery surfaces in the next track and very close quarters racing in the next track, then handicap is not really necessary, but you're giving essentially different types of players the opportunity to shine, to show their skills. And just because one player was good in one track doesn't necessarily mean that he will win under all circumstances. Conversely, for other types of multiplayer games, perhaps the weapon types can change for everyone from one game to the next, or the layout of the stage can change from one match to the next. So again, big open areas versus small areas versus some special mechanic going on the stage. And keep in mind here that even though the rules of the game are changing, we're still playing the same game, and there's no rubber banding to basically reward people who didn't do well in the game and punish people who did do well in the game. Instead, there is this always changing feeling of the game, and no matter the circumstance, everybody who participates in the game has their skills slowly built up, and every match feels fresh, and that gives you an opportunity to show off your skill and perhaps have a chance at victory. Anyway, I know this is a very controversial topic, but I know it's a situation many players have found themselves into. So I'm really curious to hear what you think about this type of mechanic. If you think that indeed punishing the winner is not the best way to handle things, or if the fun of having the handicap happen is so high that basically we don't care what the winners think because everybody else is having so much fun that that forgives everything. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your thoughts. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time, and as always, have fun.